is our cost effectiveness of salary expenditures in Major League Baseball. Given to you by myself, Jan Bigley, Megan Casey, and Brandon Paz. I'm going to turn it over to Megan, and she's going to kind of introduce the topic to us.
So Major League Baseball has for a long time been a competition between relatively advantaged and disadvantaged teams. In the book Moneyball by Michael Lewis, Lewis closely analyzes the strategies that a baseball team must use when they're unable to consider a large expenditure, such as the $700 million contract signed by Shohei Ohtani with the LA Dodgers prior to the 2024 season. The Tampa Bay Rays have made somewhat of an investment out of being a hyper-competitive team on a budget, which equates to only a fraction of what many other major league teams spend annually. And therefore, the goal of this research is to determine what represents efficient spending and strategy for a Major League Baseball team as it stands today.
All right. So I like to discuss the study that talks about the dynamics of success within the realm of professional baseball. Specifically, we've been exploring the intriguing interplay between team strategies, performance metrics, and organizational philosophies within Major League Baseball. In this study, we focused on 12 teams that advanced past the wildcard round to the playoffs 2023 season. These teams were not only selected for their success during the time frame, but also for their diverse approaches to the game. Each team, from the Los Angeles Dodgers to the Baltimore Orioles, represents a distinct stratagem that can be employed by professional baseball franchises. Two contrasting examples would be, like I said before, the LA Dodgers and the Baltimore Orioles. The Dodgers are renowned for their aggressive pursuit of expensive free agents, resulting in their hefty payrolls and a roster skewed towards seasoned veterans. On the other hand, the Orioles have embraced a more conservative approach, focusing on nurturing talent from within their minor league system rather than splurging on high-priced free agents. These divergent strategies epitomize the spectrum of approaches adopted by MLB teams. So with this, there's been two key inputs that have been identified: payroll allocation and average player age. Payroll was further segmented into expenditures on positional players and pitching staff. Meanwhile, average player age served as a proxy for organizational philosophy, reflecting the balance between seasoned veterans and youthful prospects. Now, focusing on the outputs utilized in the analysis, the number of wins in the 2023 season and reported attendance figures. These metrics served as tangible indicators of on-field success and financial viability, respectively, offering valuable insights into the overall performance and appeal of each team. By examining the relationship between inputs such as payroll, allocation, average player age, and outputs such as wins and attendance, this study unveils the intricate dynamics at play within the realm of professional baseball. It not only sheds light on the efficiency of dynamic strategy approaches, but also underscores the multifaceted nature of success within the sport.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. So moving on to the results of the study. First and foremost, on the poster that's actually on the screen right now, it does have an error. Houston was not a efficient team found in the study. That should say Atlanta. But at any rate, the DEA model identified 4 playoff teams that operated efficiently in 2023. And those were Miami, Los Angeles, Atlanta, and Baltimore. This was largely expected, although it was surprising that Tampa, which is frequently recognized for their operational efficiency, was not. Now, the interesting thing about those particular teams is that as kind of Brandon explained, that they use drastically different stratagem. So Miami is largely considered not to be an efficient team. They tend to struggle with their young player development. They don't usually throw a lot of money around in the free agency market. They also don't draw particularly well, or bring in that sort of large revenue that you would think an efficient team would. Los Angeles and Atlanta tend to operate on the further end of the spectrum. Although they do have difference in the strategy, but they do both spend. They do both draw regularly. Atlanta has actually had a major impact in terms of the strategy employed by major league teams, where they tend to sign their younger players to longer term contracts, buying out their arbitration years, and that puts a lot of that tends to keep them a little bit younger, but also tends to give them a higher payroll than other teams that utilize young players. Baltimore, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, as Brandon previously explained, they pumped a lot of money into their development over the course of the past few years, and have used a lot of young players and not spent a lot of money in free agency. They also don't draw as well as some of the other teams, but that's largely attributed to them being in a two major league team city, basically, with Baltimore and Washington, D.C. both being represented. Now, interestingly enough, we also found in the study that the model identified that pitching was primarily where the largest inefficiency in spending was. There's an old adage in baseball that says, pitching wins championships. In this case, it might not be true, as Philadelphia, Minnesota, Toronto, Texas, and Houston were all identified as spending largely way too much money on pitching, and that identified that each of those teams should spend less. But overall, for the most part, a lot of the results were not unexpected. We did find, a lot in the way of, being that these are playoff teams already. It's not surprising that most of them were operating fairly efficiently. But there was a lot of detail found in the fact that, expenditures on the payroll side simply are not super efficient. There was the finding that was unsurprising also for Tampa Bay, that they need to draw, generate more revenue in terms of their attendance. That's really the major finding on the output side. Tropicana Field is known for being a pretty bland place to watch a game. They've struggled mightily with attempting to generate public funding for their own stadium. So, that could be a factor there. And then on the win side, in terms of outputs, unsurprisingly, teams that won less games need to win more. So, honestly, that wasn't too much of a surprise. The model did not identify any team that should lower their outputs in terms of wins. Now, it should be stated also that all of the salary information was pulled from sportstrack.com, and all of the information regarding average age, wins, and attendance was pulled from baseballreference.com. In terms of other studies that we looked at, there was research regarding the KBO, the Korean Baseball Organization, that was done in 2007 by Kang Lee and Seong. They used very similar methodology to what we did, and similarly found that teams can be efficient from all manners of places of inputs and outputs. There was one team in particular, the LG Twins, during that particular study, that managed to be efficient on the basis of drawing a lot of fans, even though their overall team success was not that strong. In this case, we used all playoff teams, so all of the teams had been fairly successful on the field. They used there was only 8 teams in the KBO in 2007, and they studied all of them. We also located a study by YK Silk, which demonstrated the use of DEA modeling in selecting the Korean national baseball team, which is particularly interesting because when we initially were looking to, start this research, we were originally looking at doing individual players rather than teams. And that, again, they found, various differences in terms of efficiency and, the expectation of such. And then finally, we looked at a 2016 article regarding soccer teams and how clubs could more efficiently identify efficient scoring. And again, a major finding in that was that, the most successful teams didn't necessarily have the most team success, but that, various inputs and the, manipulation of those could identify, different levels of success in terms of efficiency. And that kind of that concludes our presentation regarding the cost effectiveness of salary expenditures in Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our presentation.